Okay, we're gonna try and get a thumbnail for this video. I have a vision in my head. It could all go horribly wrong. Okay, so I got into this position to take the thumbnail, and I now can't get out of it. Okay. I think we're good. Hello there, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Happy 2023. This is actually my second attempt trying to film this video because yesterday I had a little tooth emergency and I got home and I sat down to film this video and quickly realized that I actually couldn't open one side of my mouth, and so we cut the cameras and this is take two. So welcome back, Happy New Year. Like a lot of us, my New Year's resolution is to read more diversely, read more interesting stuff. And so today I am coming to you with a frankly absurd and unhinged book haul. This is the biggest book haul I have ever done, and I've been collecting these books over the past couple months because these are all of the books that I want to read in 2023. And so without further ado, let's dive in and I will show you my book haul. Firstly, we have the book that everyone and their hamster is talking about. It is Babel by Rf Quang, or Babel if you're American. An act of translation is always an act of betrayal. Oxford, 1836, the city of dreaming spires. It is the centre of all knowledge and progress in the world, and at its heart is Babel, Oxford University's prestigious Royal Institute of Translation. From the tower, all the power of the empire flows. Orphaned in Canton and brought to England by a mysterious guardian, Robin Swift thought Babel a paradise until it became a prison. But can a student stand against an empire? How good does that sound? I actually was really lucky to get to go to a talk which was hosted by Book of the Month, and it was basically like a live podcast recording, and I got to hear Rf Quang talk, and she's just the most articulate and eloquent and beautiful speaker. Like, I could sit and listen to her for hours, and given the size of this book, I am going to be doing exactly that. So that is Babel, the book of the year. Everyone is talking about this and I cannot wait to sink my teeth into it. And speaking of Book of the Month, I actually have my Book of the Month delivery for this month, and inside I have Hellbent. This is the sequel to Ninth House, which is like a dark academia book, sticking with the dark academia theme here. And I also got Age of Vice. Now let me tell you about Book of the Month because it is so brilliant, and they very kindly sponsored today's video. Book of the Month have never let me down. It's a book subscription service. Their team of experts vet hundreds of books and then curate a list each month for you to choose from. You select the one that most appeals to you, and then this lovely blue box arrives, and it's the best day of the whole month. And let me tell you, I met their team of experts and they are literally walking libraries. And this is great because it means that you can spend less time researching and more time actually reading. They promote loads of new and emerging authors, so you often discover great new books before everyone else does. And it's also very risk-free because if there's any month where none of the books take your fancy, you can just skip that month completely for free. Plus, you can get new release hardback fiction for a great price, including your first book for just $9.99. So head to bookofthemonth.com and get your first book. A massive thank you to Book of the Month for sponsoring this video. The link is down below. The next book, this was actually a Christmas gift, is Lapvona. This is by Otesha Moshfegh, and again, everyone is talking about this book, except for very different reasons. The reviews on this have definitely been more mixed. A lot of people say this is vile and disgusting and depraved, and I said, get me a copy. I gotta read this. In a village plagued by natural disasters, a motherless shepherd boy finds himself the unlikely pivot of a power struggle that puts all manner of faith to a savage test, in a spellbinding novel that represents Otesha Moshfegh's most exciting leap yet. She is a very interesting and exciting and an original and unique author, and so I will be reading absolutely anything that she puts out, and this is no exception. So Lapvona. The next book I clearly bought in the Waterstones half price hardback sale, and we are gonna get that ugly sticker off ASAP Rocky. Okay, there we go. This is Hearts and Bones, Love Songs for Late Use by Niamh Mulvey. She is an Irish author, and this is a book about relationships, exploring what love does to us and how we survive it. It's 10 short stories about first-time lovers, about sibling relationships, about parents. I love that this is about a range of different love stories that aren't necessarily all romantic love, because of course love exists in our hearts for people who are not just romantic partners. So I think this is going to be very interesting, and I love reading about love. Next, this is I Who Have Never Known Men. This is by Jacqueline Harpman, and the blurb is this. Deep underground, 39 women live imprisoned in a cage. Watched over by guards, these women have no memory of how they got there, no notion of time, and only vague recollections of their lives before. As the burn of electric light merges day into night, and numberless years pass, a young girl, the 40th prisoner, sits alone and outcast in the corner, but soon she will show herself to be the key to the others' escape and survival in the strange world that awaits them above. Okay, I reckon she's one of the children of the original prisoners, and that's why she's never known men, right? Detective Jack over here, Sherlock Holmes, pack it up. I've heard great things, and I think it's also a bit of a quick read too. Next, we have this book. This is The Seven Moons of Marley Almeida. This won the Booker Prize last year. It's by Shihan Karunatilaka, and it's basically about a war photographer in Sri Lanka who describes himself as a war photographer, gambler, and closet queen, and basically they've woken up dead, and he's not sure why he's dead or who killed him. And there's this belief that once your body dies, your soul doesn't fully leave your body and transcend until 7 moons have passed. So basically this character has 7 moons to work out what happened to him, and I think share photos that he took that are pretty crucial in Sri Lankan history and in the Sri Lankan war. I have a personal interest in books about the Sri Lankan Civil War, and so when I heard that this had won the Booker Prize, I needed it instantly, and here it is. This book has one of my favourite titles I've ever heard, and that is I Love You, But I've Chosen Darkness. This is by Claire Vaye Watkins, and actually the character in the book is called Claire Watkins too. And it's basically about a writer who gets on a flight for a speaking engagement, leaving behind her husband and her new baby daughter. Her temporary escape from domestic duties and an opportunity to reconnect with old friends mutates into an extended romp away from the confines of marriage and motherhood, and a seemingly bottomless descent into the past. So she goes back to the desert where she grew up in and finds that her first love still haunts her. So there we go, that is I Love You, But I've Chosen Darkness. And if you're gonna pick up one book just for the title, let's be real, it's probably gonna be this one. The next book is this one. This is Bliss Montage by Lingmar. This is another series of short stories. 8 wildly different tales of people making their way through the madness and reality of our collective delusions. Love and loneliness, connection and possession, friendship, motherhood, the idea of home. Revealing that the outlandish and the ordinary are shockingly, deceptively, heartbreakingly alike. You have me in the first half, you have me in the second half, you have me in the palm of your hand, I'm here for it. Another book shortlisted for the Booker Prize this year, Claire Keegan's Small Things Like These. It is 1985 in an Irish town. During the weeks leading up to Christmas, Bill Furlong, a coal and timber merchant, faces his busiest season. As he does the rounds, he feels the past rising up to meet him and encounters the complicit silences of a people controlled by the church. It is an unforgettable story of hope, quiet heroism, and tenderness. I am infatuated with small little books about small little lives that are understated but so powerful, like quiet but screaming to be heard. And I think this is one of those books. So this is Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. Another small little book, this is Marigold and Rose. This is by Louise Gluck, who won the Nobel Prize for Literature, and I recently read some of her poetry, but this, I believe, is prose. And it's basically about these 2 twins and their kind of symbiotic relationship. It says, simultaneously sad and funny and shot through with a sense of stoic wonder, this small miracle of a book feels inevitable and transcendent. So, I mean, I would love someone to describe a book I wrote as transcendent, and I think this is going to be a quick little read when I need to get myself out of a reading slump. One of the biggest books of the last year was this one. This is Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. And if you've been to any bookstore in the last year, you will have just seen stacks and stacks of this book everywhere. It's got a lot of praise, and it is about chemist Elizabeth Zott, who is not your average woman. In fact, Elizabeth Zott would be the first to point out that there is no such thing. It's the early 1960s, and her all-male team at Hastings Research Institute take a very unscientific view of equality, except for one, Calvin Evans, the lonely, brilliant Nobel Prize nominated grudge holder who falls in love with, of all things, her mind. True chemistry results. But like science, life is unpredictable, which is why a few years later, Elizabeth Zott finds herself not only a single mother, but the reluctant star of America's most beloved cooking show. Elizabeth's unusual approach to cooking proves revolutionary, but as her following grows, not everyone is happy. Because, as it turns out, Elizabeth Zott isn't just teaching women to cook, she's daring them to change the status quo. So, how good does that sound? Is that a sticker? Yes, it is. That will be coming off immediately. This is the anti-book sticker book club. Speaking of which, here's 2. That's frivolous. That's insane. But this book is Losing the Plot. My copy is actually signed by the author, which I think is really cool. Driven by a deep-seated desire to understand his mother's life before he was born, Derek offers a powerful imagining of her journey as she moves from Ghana to the UK and navigates parenthood in a strange and often lonely environment. The effects of displacement are felt across generations. A writer of pure empathy, intensity, and allure. That sounds so good. And it's gonna look even better without that sticker on it, and also that one. The next book I bought specifically because I had FOMO, because I felt like everyone had read this except me. This is Alone with You in the Ether. I've heard really great things about this book, and look at that edition of the book. Are we seeing how gorgeous that is? Two people meet in the Art Institute by chance. Prior to their encounter, he is a doctoral student. He manages his destructive thoughts with compulsive calculations about time travel. She is a bipolar counterfeit artist undergoing court-ordered psychotherapy. By the end of the story, these things will still be true, but this is not a story about endings. Life has involved resigning themselves to society's expectations, but could 6 conversations with a stranger be the variable that disrupts the entire simulation? Okay, I know that Olivia Blake is the author of The Atlas 6, which is a book I've never read, but I've seen her books everywhere, and I think it's about time that I read one of them, so Alone with You in the Ether, also great title. We're back to Booker Prize shortlisted books, again with... That one's not a sticker! Okay, sure. But this is Maps of Our Spectacular Bodies. It's by Maddie Mortimer, and it says, something gleeful and malevolent is moving in Leah's body, learning her life from the inside out, a shapeshifter, a disaster tourist. It's travelling down the hanks of her canals. Oh, that says banks. The banks of her canals. It's spreading. And I think this is a book about cancer. A story of coming of age at the end of a life. Utterly heartbreaking, yet darkly funny. That is my perfect mix. Maddie Mortimer's astonishing debut is a symphonic journey through one woman's body, a wild and lyrical celebration of desire, forgiveness, and the darkness within us all. It's on the TBR, and reviews of all of these books will be coming very, very soon. Next, I have Salt Slow because Julia Armfield wrote one of my favourite books of the last year, which was Our Wives Under the Sea. The writing was so poetic and lyrical and just stunning that I was like, I need to read everything else you've ever written in your life, whether that's your tax returns, whether that's your shopping list, I will have that, please. Fortunately for me, she has actually published another book, and that's called Salt Slow. Immensely accomplished, unnerving stories full of gothic menace and beautiful writing. Say no more, sign me up. This book is called Hex. It's by Jenny Fagan. It's the 4th of December, 1591. On this, the last night of her life, in a prison cell several floors below Edinburgh's High Street, a convicted witch receives a mysterious visitor who says she comes from a future where women are still persecuted for who they are and what they believe. Hex is a visceral depiction of what happens when a society is consumed by fear and superstition, exploring how the terrible force of a king's violent crusade against ordinary women can still be felt right up to the present day. And I'm actually going to Edinburgh in a couple weeks, so maybe this will be coming with me. Maybe this is the perfect read for a trip to Edinburgh. The next book is this one. It's called 3 Rooms. It's by Jo Hamya. It's autumn 2018, and a young woman moves into a rented room in university accommodation, ready to begin a job as a research assistant at Oxford. Here, living and working in the spaces that have given birth to the country's leaders, she is both outsider and insider, and she can't shake the feeling that real life is happening elsewhere. 8 months later, she finds herself in London. She's landed a temp contract at a society magazine and is paying £80 a week to sleep on a stranger's sofa. Summer rolls on, and England rolls with questions around its domestic civil rights, Brexit, Grenfell, climate change, homelessness. Meanwhile, tensions from her flatmate escalate. She is overworked and underpaid, and the prospects of a permanent job seem increasingly unlikely, until finally she has to ask herself, what is this all for? I love that this is going to be talking about contemporary politics and issues and culture, and so I think this is going to be fascinating for me to read. Okay, we have Watching Women and Girls. This is a short story collection which movingly explores how women and girls are look at one another, and look at themselves, and how living as an object can shape their passions, fears, and joys. With a clear eye and dark humour, Daniel Pender considers sex, parenting, grief, and class as lenses for the ways in which the world watches women, and how women are always watching back. Obviously, I keep saying I can't wait to read this one, but I can't wait to read this one. I can't wait to read all of these books. Next we have an essay collection, because I'm actually an intellectual. I'm kidding. I brought this for the cover. This is by Elena Savage. It's a collection of essays concerning understanding, and it's described as a masterful, fearless book in which strength and vulnerability collide. This is another book that has been so highly praised by book critics. It's called The Candy House, and hopefully I will believe the hype. However, I have to say, I'm not a massive fan of this cover because look, I ripped it already. Literally by accident, I was stacking the books and this just immediately ripped. So I feel like that is a very poor cover design, and I think that the jacket is gonna just have to come off, and we're just gonna have to have it like this. Although that jacket has the blurb on it, so we need that back temporarily. From one of the most sensational and iconic writers of our time comes an electrifying, deeply moving novel about the quest for authenticity, privacy, and meaning in a world where our memories are no longer our own. Set in 2010 with spellbinding linked narratives, it's a stunning, fierce, and exhilarating testament to the tenacity and transcendence of human longing for real connection, love, family, privacy, and redemption. So that, in two halves, is The Candy House. This one is Olga Dies Dreaming. From a blazing new talent comes the story of an upscale wedding planner. My books are falling over as I speak. So she's a wedding planner grappling with her absent mother, her glittering career among New York's elite, and her Puerto Rican roots in the wake of Hurricane Maria. Set in 2017 against the backdrop of New York City in the months surrounding the most devastating hurricane in Puerto Rico's history, this is a story that examines political corruption, familial strife, and the very notion of the American dream, all while asking what it really means to weather a storm. Great blurb, love that. Okay, so that is Olga Dies Dreaming, and as you know, I've been living in New York for the past like 3 and a bit months, and so I'm intrigued to read more New York stories, especially now that I know the city quite well, and we'll be starting with that one. This is Young Mungo by Douglas Stewart. Now, Douglas Stewart broke my heart in 2022 because I read Shuggy Bane, which he also wrote, and it just crushed me. It devastated me, and I feel like this is going to be an equally powerful and moving novel. I've heard this is even sadder, and I said, sign me up. That sounds incredible. That's exactly what I'm looking for. An extraordinary, powerful second novel, a vivid portrayal of working class life, and the deeply moving story of the dangerous first love of two young men, Mungo and James. I'm going to assume that's them. Described as amazingly intimate, compassionate, gripping portrait of addiction, courage, and love. A classic that will be loved, admired, and remembered for a very long time. So, I better get started. This book is called The Novelist, a novel. And I kind of love how meta that is. This is by Jordan Castro. It's described as inventive, funny, and surprisingly tender for a first novel. We follow a young man over the course of a single morning as he tries and fails to write an autobiographical novel, finding himself instead drawn into the infinite spaces of Twitter. Well, that's relatable, as well as quotidian rituals and his own mind. The act of making coffee prompts reflection on the limits of self-knowledge. An editor's embarrassing tweet sparks rage at the literary establishment. I love things like this. I love when people have more kind of deep thoughts on mundane everyday encounters. I love like unpacking things like that. I love that style of writing, and so I think this could become a new favorite. If it's done right, this could be a new favorite. In fact, I'm so intrigued to know like which of these books end up in my favorite books of the year content later on in 2023. We'll see. I'm gonna predict that this is gonna be on there though. I've got high hopes. This book is brand spanking new. It is literally being released in January 2023, and this is called Really Good Actually. It's by Monica Heisey, and it is a highly anticipated release of this year because Monica Heisey was a screenwriter from Schitt's Creek. So I think this is gonna be funny. Oh my god, it's signed! Number 94. One of 100 limited edition proof copies. Damn! Okay, if my house was burning down in a fire, I would save this book. And I haven't even read it yet. Maggie's marriage has ended just 608 days after it started, but she's fine. She's doing really good, actually. Oh, I love it when they reference the title. I love that. That, for me, it's kind of made my day, not gonna lie. Sure, she's alone for the first time in her life, can't afford her rent, and her obscure PhD is going nowhere, but at the age of 29, Maggie is determined to embrace her new status as a surprisingly young divorcee. I think this is gonna be a romp. I think it's gonna be really, really fun, and I'm looking forward to it. Mouth to Mouth. A struggling author is stuck at the airport, his flight endlessly delayed. As he kills time at the gate, he bumps into a former classmate of his, Jeff, who is waiting for the same flight. The charismatic Jeff invites the author to drinks in the first-class lounge, and there, swearing him to secrecy, begins telling him the fascinating and disturbing story of his gilded life, starting with a pivotal incident from his youth. Okay, it's a long blurb. I'm gonna summarize for us. What did Jeff do? We were all on the edge of our seat. He noticed a swimmer drowning, rescued the unconscious man, and then left him in emergency services. But he can't let go of the events of that traumatic day. He begins to feel compelled about... I'm just reading the whole thing. I said I was going to summarize, I'm not. Okay, basically, the guy he ended up saving turns out to be an art dealer. He gets brought into the world of power and wealth, gets seduced by this lifestyle, falls in love with the art dealer, and then their relationship becomes very dark and twisted. So, that is Mouth to Mouth. Summarized by me, which is bold for someone who hasn't read the book yet. This is Checkout 19. This is by Claire Louise Bennett, who wrote Pond, which I read for my degree, and I remember it being so good. I remember everyone in the class being like, this feels like something I would actually read in my own time, not just like for the degree. Fusing rich fantasy with lived experience, Checkout 19 is one woman's vivid and playful journey through the stories that define us. That's quite vague and ambiguous. I feel like I don't really know what this book is about still, but We'll find out, I guess. Okay, I am so head over heels in love with this color of this cover. It is so beautiful, and this is one of my most, if not my most anticipated read of this year that comes out in 2023. Because this is Atalanta by Jennifer Saint, who is a saint. She is the patron saint of Greek mythology retellings. She never lets me down. Her retellings of Ariadne and Electra was so good, and I'm so happy that she's released another one. Spurned by a king, raised by bears, blessed by a goddess. Jennifer Saint is so great at recentering women in Greek mythology retellings, and so I just know this is going to be so good. Now, sticking with that colour scheme, we have In the Dream House. This is by Carmen Maria Machado, and everyone says this is one of like the best memoirs ever. It's like a literary memoir. It says, engrossing and wildly innovative, In the Dream House traces her relationship with a charismatic but volatile woman. Struggling to make sense of her harrowing experience, each chapter uses a different narrative lens as she holds events up to the light and examines them from different angles. She casts a critical eye over legal proceedings, fairy tales, Disney villains, and more, infusing everything with her characteristic wit, playfulness, and openness. The result is a wrenching, riveting book that explodes our ideas about what a memoir can do and be. I cannot wait. And we're back to shortlisted Booker Prize books. Honestly, everything on the list just intrigued me so much this year. And this one is Treacle Walker by Alan Garner. An introspective young boy, Joseph squints at the world with his lazy eye. Living alone in an old house, he reads comics, collects birds' eggs, sure, why not, and plays with his marbles. When one day, a rag and bone man called Treacle Walker appears, exchanging an empty jar of a cure-all medicine and a donkey stone for a pair of Joseph's pajamas and a lamb's shoulder blade. I keep reading this and thinking, am I reading that right? But those are the words that are printed in front of me. Anyway, it says, a mysterious friendship develops between them. This is a fusion of myth, magic, and the stories we make for ourselves. An extraordinary novel from one of our greatest living writers. There you go. The problem is I'm nosy, so when books are nominated for awards, I want to read them and I want to know why they were nominated for awards and which one I would personally choose as my winner. So anyway, as you know, I've recently been in New York studying writing. I was doing a writing course, and this, I've been told by a lot of writer friends, is one of the best books on contemporary writing. It's by Amina Kane, who wrote Indelicacy. I loved Indelicacy. I thought it was a beautiful book. I was really engrossed by her writing, and so I want to read writers talking about writing, especially writers that I enjoy. So this is A Horse at Night. In fact, the review on the cover is by Claire Louise Bennett, as in Claire Louise Bennett. Everything is always connected, honestly. This is a diary about writing fiction, and as someone also writing fiction, I think this is essential reading. Next we have Night Bitch, cracking title. One day the mother was a mother, but then one night she was quite suddenly something else. At home full-time with her 2-year-old son, an artist finds she is struggling. She is lonely and exhausted. Her husband, always traveling for work, calls her from faraway hotel rooms. One more toddler bedtime and she fears she might lose her mind. Instead, she starts gaining things, surprising things that happen one night when her child will not sleep. New appetites, new instincts, and from deep within herself, a new voice. I find books about female rage so fun and engrossing and captivating, and I think Rachel Yoder has added a new one to that canon. And I've just seen the review on this is by Carmen Maria Machado, who wrote this one. Literally, you could probably link up all of these books just by the reviews that they've given each other. Next, we have The Rabbit Hutch. This was sent to me by Waterstones because it was their fiction book of the year. It's by Tessa Gunty and described as a wildly inventive, deeply moving work of art. Surprisingly, by someone whose book I don't have. So there's a first time for everything. A bitingly funny, razor-sharp debut about a motley assortment of residents in a crumbling apartment block. Welcome to The Rabbit Hutch. And that's all it's gonna give me, so I guess we'll have to read it to find out. This book is called The School for Good Mothers. Frida has had a bad day. She remembers taking Harriet from her cot at 4 AM and changing her nappy. She remembers giving her a morning bottle. She also remembers desperately needing to finish an article for work, but she'd left the file for it on her desk in the office. She would just go and get it quickly. She'd be back in an hour. Harriet would be fine. She was so sure it would be okay. I've got a sneaky suspicion it's not gonna be okay. But in this world, Frida's bad day could cost her everything. The state has now taken Harriet away and decided that Frida is not fit to care for her daughter, that she must be retrained. Soon, mothers everywhere will be re-educated, because bad mothers must learn to be good. The School for Good Mothers is an explosive, provocative, and moving novel about love and the pressures of perfectionism, parenthood, and privilege. The 3 Ps. You're all gonna kill me when I say that I haven't read this book yet, but this is my brilliant friend. I made my video on books featured in The White Lotus, and this book was featured in season 1, and I can't believe that I haven't read this because I feel like it's a classic. I feel like it's essential reading, and for any book lover. It's the first in the Neapolitan Quartet. It's by Elena Ferrante, and it's iconic. This is an iconic book. Set in a poor but vibrant neighborhood in Naples, it's a portrait of 2 young women seeking to carve out a destiny for themselves, and the story of a city and a country undergoing momentous change. This is on my like must-read list of 2023. If I go into 2024 having not read this book, I've let you down, I've let myself down, I've let Elena down, and I've let The White Lotus down. What am I even talking about? Next book is this one. This is Sour Grapes, and it's about a literary festival. It's a writer talking about how weird writers are. And I love that because having attended a book festival last year, I can attest to this. Writers are the weirdest people you will ever meet. And obviously, most of the time, writers are very introspective, they work alone, they just sit with their notepad or their computer and write. And so then when you put a bunch of people who are like that in a party or at a festival together, it is so weird. And so Sour Grapes by Dan Rhodes, I think, is going to unpack that, and I can't wait. I'm taking this with me to the first book festival that I go to in 2023, I'm telling you. This is Dislocations by Sylvia Malloy and translated by Jennifer Croft, which records a gradual loss of a beloved friend, a disappearance in ways expected and painfully surprising. A book that challenges disintegration with a precise and vital prose through the sensibility of one of Latin America's greatest storytellers. Speaking of writers from South America who are so lucid and brilliant and wonderful, Mariana Enriquez, this is Things We Lost in the Fire. And I read her other collection of short stories, which is called The Dangers of Smoking in Bed, and it's this great Argentinian horror. It's the kind of book that makes you think, I wish there was more of this, and it turns out there is, so I picked this one up too. A couple of romances that I picked up because I saw them on TikTok, and I get book FOMO. Like, I'm telling you, it's a real thing. I see people talking about these books all the time, and I wanted to know what was up. So firstly, we have The Dead Romantics, which is about a ghostwriter with one big problem. She's supposed to be penning swoon-worthy novels for a famous romance author, but after a bad breakup, she can no longer believe in love. The last thing she expects to see is a ghost at her front door. Not just any ghost, however, but the stern form of her still very hot, yet now unquestionably dead, new editor. That escalated so quickly, but sure, that is The Dead Romantics. I am actually an idiot because this is Terms and Conditions. I didn't realize this is the second book in a series, so I'm now gonna have to buy the first one, which is the fine print, but I own this. I'm gonna try and read it in 2023 after I read the first one. It literally, look at the spine. Look at that big 2 mocking me. Damn. Just in case anyone was unsure, I am still a bumbling idiot going into this year. New year, same me. Oh, and I also have Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. I'm doing a video on the most recommended books of 2022, and I literally watched so many videos. I did this complete survey of the most recommended books on BookTube, on Bookstagram, on BookTok, and I tallied them, and I was so surprised that this ended up in the top 5. Obviously, Colleen Hoover is a hugely successful and popular author right now, but I hadn't really heard that much hype about this book until I started actively looking into it. But people love this, and so I'm gonna be reading it for that video, so you can see that on my channel very, very soon. You should subscribe. I mean, if you've watched this video to this point, you might as well subscribe, right? And this is about a young mother who fights to earn a place in her child's life, but is there room for her? We'll find out, we'll see, and I'll let you know what I think of this book very, very soon. This book is called People Change. It's by Vivek Shraya. Vivek Shraya knows this to be true. People change. We change our haircuts and our outfits and our minds. We change names, titles, labels. We attempt to blend in or to stand out. We outgrow relationships. We abandon dreams for new ones. We start fresh. We seize control of our stories. We make resolutions. In fact, nobody knows this better than Vivek, who made a career of embracing many roles: artist, performer, musician, writer, model, teacher. Now you're just showing off, Vivek. Like, there's a lot of things going on there. It's annoying that you're good at all of them. Anyway. I think that's the opposite of the point of this book. In People Change, she reflects on the origins of this impulse, tracing it to childhood influences from Hinduism to Madonna. What emerges is a meditation on change itself, why we fear it, why we're drawn to it, what motivates us to change, and what traps us in place. A guide to celebrating our many selves and the inspiration to discover who will become next. I think that's gonna be a great book to read right at the beginning of the year. Then I have some poetry collections. This is Beast at Every Threshold by Natalie Wee. Memories become malleable, pop culture provides a backdrop to glittery queer love, and the folklore almost got that. And folklore speaks back as a radical tool of survival. Beguiling and deeply imagined, Wee's poems explore thresholds of marginality, queerness, immigration, nationhood, and reinvention of the South through myth. And then I have this one. This is Haruko/Love Poems. It is by June Jordan, who is described as a writer of integrity and will. Haruko traces the faltering arc of a passionate love affair with another woman, while Love Poems encompasses relationships with men and women, political resistance, the need for self-care in a demanding, uncaring world, and apocalyptic visions of the eruptions of Mount Vesuvius. She said range. I also have this book. We're giving up with taking the stickers off at this point. We just gotta get to the end of the video, okay? But this is Trust. This is by Hernan Diaz, and this was also shortlisted for this year's Booker Prize. Do you notice a trend? At once an immersive story and a brilliant literary puzzle, Trust engages the reader in a quest for the truth, while confronting the deceptions that often live at the heart of relationships, the reality-warping force of capital, and the ease with which power can manipulate facts. And this is set in New York City. Maybe I'll do like a reading New York books in New York City. That could be quite fun. Normally, books with this kind of cover seem very boring to me. It's not something I would naturally gravitate towards, but I've heard great things, so it's on the TBR. This is Salt Crystals. It's by Christina Bandek. It's translated by Robin Myers. San Andres rises gently from the Caribbean, part of Colombia but closer to Nicaragua, the largest island in an archipelago claimed by the Spanish, colonized by the Puritans, worked by slaves, and home to Arab traders, migrants from the mainland, and the descendants of everyone who came before. For Victoria, whose origins on the island go back generations, but whose identity is contested by her accent, her skin colour, her years far away, the sunburnt tourists, sewage blooms, and sudden storms bring her into vivid, intimate contact with the island that she thought she knew. Okay, interesting. This book right here is The Age of Doubt, and I'm pretty sure this is a collection of short stories. The Age of Doubt collects some of Park Hyung-ni's most famous works, including her 1955 debut and other stories featuring characters that would appear in Toji, her 20-volume epic. Wow. It's translated by a range of different people, and I think this is gonna be great. This is Hurricane Season by Fernanda Melcher, and I read her book Paradise last year and devoured it in one sitting because it was so great and searing and beautiful and shocking and insane, and the pace was great. The pages basically turned themselves, and everyone said to me I have to read this other book by her called Hurricane Season, and so I absolutely will. And then I think this is the final book. I'm not sure though, I could be wrong. This is To My Sisters. This is by my wonderful friends Renee and Courtney, and it's a guide to building lifelong friendships. They have a wonderful podcast. Whenever I've got to hear them speak, they are so inspiring. With their own friendship spanning a decade, their mission to reinvigorate sisterhood and redefine womanhood has turned into a global community of women helping each other to reclaim their power. I cannot wait to read their writing, because if it's anything like the way they talk, I just know it's gonna be Goosebump Central. Goosebump City, population 1, me. Oh look, there they are, love them. Okay, I think that is everything in this book haul. So I hope that this video helped you find something to read in 2023. Best believe I'm gonna be booked and busy, and don't forget you can join my community of book lovers by pressing the join button down below. We have a Discord chat, which is really fun. We do little Q&As, I give you behind the scenes of videos I'm working on. It's a good time. You can also subscribe if you're new and give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. I'm also on Book Talk, Bookstagram. If you can put book in front of it, I'm there. I'm also on Goodreads and the Storygraph if you want to track my reading progress throughout the year and get the first insights of my reviews. I'll leave the links down below. And of course, a massive shout out to Book of the Month for sponsoring this video. The link is down below. All the best, stay in touch, have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you all throughout 2023. Okay, bye-bye. Bye!